Hey everybody, what's going on? And it is Thursday at 3:30 Central, and that means it's time to talk to some amazing people. And I have two amazing people right here. We have master trainer and early ed specialist Albert Wright, who is our special guest today. Welcome, Albert. And we also have our host with the most, that is Heather Wells, board certified cognitive and literacy specialist with Brain Balance Centers. And each week we get a chance to come to you a couple times a week, every Tuesday, every Thursday at 3:30 Central, to maybe share some information with you that you didn't know. I personally am a brain balance parent. My son went through the program for 9 months, and it was a wonderful resource to us. And I think right now, where a lot of parents are at home with their kids, there's a lot of resources and thoughts and things out there that can help you get through this tough time. So with that, I'm going to hand the show over to Heather. I'm here for technical support and of course, moral support. And we also want to say thank you to our wonderful friends over at Dallas-Fort Worth, DFW Child. They are here with us today, and we are able to broadcast this on their channel as well. So we just wanted to say thank you. And with that, Heather, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Cory. Albert, thank you so much for joining us today. You're a rock star of a human being, and I would like for you to give a little overview, tell about yourself, a little bit about your family, maybe. So for anybody who doesn't know you.
No problem at all. So just to kind of give you a quick kind of overview of who I am. I have been in the field of early ed for a little over 20 years. So please don't let the vest fool you. I potty train with the best of them. I've been in these streets. Been in the field of early ed. I've taught threes, infants, tots, and twos. I am actually a parent who has now adopted two children. My oldest one, he is 3.5. His name is Sebastian. And I've also adopted Sebastian's half brother named Oliver. He is super cute, but he got an edge about him. Okay. Understand that.
He's a handful.
He is. But yeah, that's kind of, I live in the DFW area, but I definitely keep Houston close to my heart. And that's just a little bit about me.
Thanks, Albert. Everybody's going to fall in love with you very quickly. If anybody on here who doesn't know who you are, but Albert, I met kind of on the speaking circuit, and we bonded very quickly because we both have personal stories that really are behind the depth of the passion that we have. There are certain things everyone watching this has things from experience that you could not have learned in a textbook. And for Albert, it's dyslexia. And for me, it was issues that looked like dyslexia, but were something different. So we're going to kind of distinguish those things for you. So Albert, how was it you made it to 30 years old before you were diagnosed with dyslexia?
Yes. Golly, a lot of my friends ask me, hey, Albert, how was school with you before the diagnosis? And I'm very real about it. It was a nightmare. I just thought that I didn't like school. School didn't like me. Like some people have a very kind of good knack for reading and that kind of stuff. And that just wasn't how I was put together. My wife, she can read a book a night, weirdo. But yeah. But I just was like, that's just not a gifting that I have. I was 30 and I was trying to go back to school to finish my associate's degree at the time. And not because I needed it, but because I just wanted it. Really tried hard. My wife was like, baby, you're trying hard and it's still not working out. Something's going on. So I went, got tested, and at 30 was diagnosed with pretty severe dyslexia, ADHD, and really severe OCD as well too.
And I appreciate what you just said right there, because your wife is saying you are struggling way too hard. I talk about the hidden churn. It's even the name of my upcoming book, because there are certain struggles that are extremely visible to parents and teachers, and there are others that they can't put their finger on, or it looks like something completely different. So Albert and I have talked before about labels, and labels like dyslexia or OCD or anxiety disorder sometimes help narrow a focus on what a challenge is so that you can come up with a plan which needs to be individualized. But some of these kids start getting other types of character labels. And so can you talk about some of the behaviors that you did to kind of cover the struggle?
Well, they weren't my proudest moments, but one thing people don't know is people don't always realize a lot of times when a child acts out, either aggressively or with bad, quote unquote, bad behavior, it's not because they're bad. It can be because they're broken.
Yes.
And for me personally, I acted out. I was kind of the class clown a lot when I could be. I did kind of get into a lot of fights. And I remember being a small children. I tell this story. I have a book that I wrote recently called Dyslexia is My Superpower. And I tell this story about little Albert sitting in like this circle time. And the teacher would read a page and she'd kind of pass the book around. And I remember thinking I will do anything possible to get out of this circle before that book got to me, because I knew I couldn't read it. And that's absolutely true. I remember thinking it does not matter if I get sent to the principal's office or I get in trouble. I just don't want to be embarrassed in front of all my other friends because they can do something that I can't do.
Right. And thank you for sharing that. I mean, we all have moments we're not probably extremely proud of, especially as kids. But I can tell you, we have families come in weekly and it makes sense. It's not that there's something wrong. It is a perception and we get where it comes from. So but it looks like your child is lazy or task avoidant or defiant. All of these things, defiance does exist and there are many causes of it. But that's why we have to know where it's coming from. We got to get past the symptoms and look underneath the hood and get to the root of the challenges so that we can tailor a plan that's going to work for this child. But
Heather, I'm sorry. Do you mind if I say something real quick?
Yes. No.
There are a lot of parents on here, correct?
Yes.
Can I speak to them for 1 second?
You go for it.
Okay. Can you push the camera in on my face so I can make sure you can see me now? To all my parents that are sitting out there listening to me right now, first and foremost, let me say this to you. Thank you. Thank you for getting your children tested. That right there is one of the biggest things that you can do as that parent. A lot of times as parents, you're like, why didn't I see it earlier? Why didn't I see it sooner? Look at all the time I've wasted. Look at me. All those things are for naught. The most important thing is when you saw it, you did what you could. A lot of times people ask me, hey, Albert, you got to 30 and your mom didn't know. Like you were in a single parent home and your mom just did not know. How is that even possible to get to 30 and your mom didn't know? And I tell her very honestly, my mom couldn't see dyslexia in me because she couldn't see dyslexia in her. And I am 99% sure that my mom is an undiagnosed dyslexic that just didn't get the service that she needed. So know whatever age your child is now, whether they're 2, 13, or 31, you as a parent getting in there and kind of helping carve that path out for them will help them exponentially later on in life. So, okay, you can pull back on me now.
Oh no, that we are on the same wavelength. I've shared this before because I too sit down with parents every week who are beating themselves up. I've also been the mom in your shoes. I've been on the floor in the closet thinking, what am I doing wrong as a mother? I have a neurology background, but it's just different when you're the parent, you know? But I've also been the child, and I was born legally blind. I had huge tumors on both of my optic nerves, applying a ton of pressure in my brain. I was in excruciating pain 24/7. And you know how many times I complained of pain? 0. To me, it was not pain. It was the norm. And so one thing, there's a difference between common and normal, and kids are going to grow out of it. That's one of the biggest myths. But I always tell parents basically verbatim what you just said, is that as soon as you realize there was a problem, you sought help. And that's all that matters. I'm not mad at my parents because I suffered for years and they didn't know I was blind and had tumors. I was just grateful that they did seek the help I needed once they realized there was a problem. Absolutely. So that's what matters. And, you know, all that hindsight and all that, but you don't know what you don't know. And I mean, that's true professionally, personally, just in every aspect of our life, of our lives. But I wanted to be thinking, sometimes we talked about labels that are sometimes applied to kids. It can be by anybody. It can be by friends, schools. And it's not ill-intended. A teacher may say, or a parent, my child just doesn't apply himself. He's so smart. That sounds innocuous on the surface. Oh, I called him smart. And I'm showing that I believe in you because I'm saying, if you would apply yourself, if that child is applying themselves and you're telling them they're not, what is that? That is just like, man, we are just growing this big mountain of can'ts that I don't know how to overcome.
I remember thinking, people telling me, hey, Albert, just try harder, just try harder. And I remember thinking, if somebody tells me one more time to try harder, I'm going to throat punch somebody. You know what I'm saying? I can't, this is all I got. This is everything I got. But, of course, as a child, it's hard to articulate those things. But yeah.
Yeah. My brother used to wonder, I mean, this is not a big deal, but I just looked up to him so much growing up. And he was just like, you're so athletic, Heather. Why do you act so scared when you're trying to catch a ball? And I didn't even have the words for it, but it's because I don't know when that ball is going to arrive.
Absolutely.
I don't have that depth perception, and I can't judge where it is in relation to me, which was only one of many challenges I faced. There was nothing, he was calling me an athlete, but then there was an undercurrent that was not meant badly that came across to me like, wow, I'm a loser. Why do I do that? I don't know. But so what, so when we're talking about dyslexia, some of the signs to look for is not just about the reading struggle. It is also about behaviors or communication, regardless, under any circumstances, reading or not. Behaviors are communicating something, and we have to get to the why. So, you know what? Let's talk about, I loved what you shared about math, and I want to go somewhere with that. Can you give some examples of the specific academic struggles, what it was like for you? Is there a way to kind of paint that picture?
A bit. Okay. Yeah. So first of all, not all dyslexics look the same. That's Correct. One thing I try to make sure everybody understands. So what it looks like in me, it might not necessarily look like in everyone else. Mm-hmm. So for me specifically, things that I struggle with is I do see D's and B's backwards a bit. Some common myths about dyslexics are that we're really good at math. I am not. Another common myth about dyslexics is that they're highly intelligent, which I am. We say what it is. But yeah, school just looked different for me. If I could use my charm and my wit to help me kind of get by with people, that's what I would do. And when that did not work, it kind of went into another kind of just more, I don't like school. School's just not for me. Right. So yeah.
And then you were unknowingly, you were giving yourself a label based on your experience that I'm just not a school person.
Absolutely.
And that becomes a mantra that these kids live by. So if I'm not a school person, at the older they get, sometimes there's a trend. It's not always like this, but kids who tried, like, I don't have any more oomph. And so the older they get, they just give up and they just kind of rebel against all the years that they felt like they wasted when they were trying,
It wasn't until I actually, and people say they don't always like labels, but it was not until I got that label of dyslexia that I truly realized it wasn't me. It was this thing. And there was nothing wrong with Albert Wright. There was just something that I had. And it took a friend of mine, a mentor of mine, to tell me, hey, Albert, everybody has something going on with them. You just have a name for yours. When I was able to identify dyslexia, it said, okay, these are things that can help me, and these are things that I struggle with. And it gave me tools. One way I read now, I read always with a pen and a highlighter. I highlight things and write things in margins. If people send me a long email, like right now, if anybody in this wants to send me an email, writeonetraining@gmail.com. If you send a long, drawn-out email, Brooke's going to get it. She's going to read it to me, and I'm going to tell her what to say. But me personally, people tend to send me things in bullet points, just because that's just how I retain things best. So yeah.
Yeah. I love what you said there, because there are good labels and bad labels. The lazy child, the task avoidant child, the problem child, those are not good labels under any circumstances that I can possibly think of. But when you are pinpointing what's going on, it doesn't mean, okay, now we have this kind of turnkey thing we'll do for this child because they're dyslexic. In fact, that has gone so far that a lot of schools if there's a reading challenge, they put kids in the dyslexia program, and it may not be dyslexia. So one of the myths of dyslexia is that it is visually based, and it is much more auditorily based, just from a neurological standpoint. I mean, functional MRIs, we know what's going on in general, even though how it plays out in each person is different, because we all have a combination of strengths and weaknesses. And we're going to talk about the strengths that, the gift of dyslexia as well. But that's important to note, because for example, for a lot of the kids we see, if they hear the word desk, D-E-S-K, if they hear it that way, the K from an auditory standpoint may go from the ear to the brain faster than the S did, and they may spell it Dex, and so that is auditory. Whereas with me, my eyes were jumping all over the place. So I saw letters in a different order. I didn't hear them in a different order. And you may say, well, what difference does it make? So it affected your reading, your writing, your spelling. It matters, because the accommodations that are going to work, the strategies, there are some of these things that, like with visual perception and processing, that are fixable.
Absolutely.
And so we've had so many families who come in and say, my child's been in this dyslexia program for 3 years, and it's really not helping that much. And then we do an assessment, and their auditory processing is at age or 2 years ahead, and their visual perception is shot. And here's why: because it was being worked on from a phonological awareness, sounding out words, decoding words, language standpoint, rather than from the visual. If your eyes are skipping around, and a lot of kids with visual perception issues write things in mirror reverse, not even just one letter, like mirror reverse, but one of the other things is some of the commonalities in some of the symptoms actually come because if you're straining, like the auditory is not working, sometimes you might pull on your visual more if you have dyslexia. And when we are awake and our eyes are open, this is one of my little nerd facts that I love. It's fascinating. 2/3 of the energy of our brains is going to visual perception and processing. That's fascinating when you think about everything the brain is responsible for. So anytime you're straining and you're running out of steam, and it's just like when I was blind, my auditory tried to overcompensate for it. With a lot of kids, that's overwhelming, and then they stop following directions. For me, I could hear someone if they were singing like 1/16 of a note, sharp or flat. I didn't want to, I just could.
Yeah.
And it helped me as a musician and as a singer. So, but anytime we're compensating, that's a churn. It's cool that we can, but anything we can do to decrease that churn improves quality of life.
Absolutely. One thing that I do, and people, I like to talk about accommodations a lot. One accommodation that I needed specifically was, because of my certain mix of disabilities, my mind kind of races at this uncontrollable rate all the time. So I kind of read people and behaviors and microexpressions. So one thing that I use a lot is a bracelet that I have. And pretty much everybody who's seen me kind of know I have this bracelet with me whether I'm on stage or when I'm talking to friends or running around, Target on the weekends or whatever. And this bracelet kind of helps me kind of pace things. I know that there are exactly 17 beads on this. I know that the third one from the left is chipped. I know those things, so it provides me a rhythm that when my mind is going fast, the rhythm of this can kind of help me kind of find a pace for it. So that's why I tell parents sometimes whatever accommodation that child may need, it can't come directly from a book. Sometimes it has to be that child, just pick it. So I tell people, if your child has dyslexia, Don't go out and every dyslexic person try to buy bracelets. That might not work for your child.
Right.
You've got to give them a myriad of different tools, and we got to figure out what works best for them in that situation. So
for sure. I love that the specificity you went into with the bracelet, even though we know that will absolutely not work for everyone. It will work for some. And that's significant that you said about it giving you the rhythm, because part of our auditory processing that's involved with dyslexia is not only decoding words and maybe kind of hearing gobbledygook that comes in wrong orders or kind of merged together. The same part of our brain that has that auditory processing also is our rhythm and timing. My ability to keep a beat to music starts improving not my executive functions, time management, organization, prioritizing, as well as how many sounds or syllables are in a word. So they all link back together. So that was a really good that you went into that kind of specific mode. But just like a child is not his dyslexia, he is not his ADHD, he is not his anxiety disorder. We have to separate. The label is good for the purpose of getting a direction, but it is, even though we have to individualize it, but it is only one facet of that person. It is not equivalent to their identity. And a lot of
sister.
I am so passionate about this. It's like we are more than the roles we play. We're more than a spouse or a child or a student or a baseball player or a musician. We are our thoughts, our hearts, our souls, our motivations, and working on that growth mindset. Growth mindset is like understanding when you do hard things, your brain grows. Now, certain things we got to make accommodations, but you're still growing. We want to stretch our kids, but not beyond the capacity that they're able for, and have realistic expectations for them. And that's just really important. So, and journaling really helps with that. And you're working on literacy at the same time, but we are not labels. We are a combination of our hearts and souls and minds and our dreams and everything else. And helping kids know that is one of the most nurturing and powerful things you could do. And it will even increase their efforts and their excitement. You're kind of putting something tangible. Hey, your brain grows muscles when you do hard things. Some of these kids might have trouble with abstract, so concrete really helps them get that. Will you share what you did about math and when it works best for you? And we tied it in with Richard Branson.
Richard Branson, yes.
Branson, sorry.
No, you're fine. You're fine. The way I see things, if you just give me like a math problem, like 23 times whatever, it's not going to work out well for me. It's just not. So what's best for me is to put it in context of something. So if I have 20 of these and I'm able to kind of put it in more of a story form, it allows me the mentality to be able to kind of fish out what exactly is going on. And I use this example with Richard Branson. I saw this one time on a documentary that he had. And it talked about, he was in a meeting and he was talking to someone about net and gross profit. And one of his counterparts said, "Hey, you don't understand this, do you?" And he said, "I really don't." So they pulled out a piece of paper and they kind of just drew an ocean. And it said, okay, all of this out here is the gross. And then they had a net and they drew a net with some fish and said, this is your net profit. So the net came out of the gross. And whenever they said that in that documentary, when Richard Branson said that, it was like, absolutely. Like that is how resonates. I get it. So
yes. And then when you told me that, it made so much sense to me, even though I don't have dyslexia. It makes sense because sometimes it is some of the details and I don't get how these rules go together and that kind of thing. But in that example, it is a literal big picture of here's the ocean and here's the net, but it can also be a mental schema, big picture. So you shared with me that you're very strong in deductive reasoning and planning. So if you have math involved in that part as only one part of the big picture equation of your plan, you can do it. But if it is just an equation, it's like it's floating in space. It doesn't connect to anything else. So teaching in context is really helpful. And anything for a lot of our kids, dyslexia or not, some kids have difficulty with the details. Visual perception is an issue of difficulty with details. Also, but provide the big picture, the context, so that they can start getting how everything goes together and things flow a little better. That was really that was a beautiful. I watched that last night, by the way. It's really great.
Yeah, if I can figure out how things tie together, it gives me so much better a viewpoint on kind of what they're actually wanting from something. That goes with books, that goes with problems, that goes with stories, that just goes with sometimes talking with friends. Sometimes I'll need a friend to tell me, okay, I'll be like, okay, so give me the big picture, and then let's go back to talking about the little piece you were talking about.
Mm-hmm.
Just so I can kind of get my mind around all of it. So yeah.
Yeah, and that working memory is super involved in literacy too, and that is a great strategy for them as well. A lot of times it has to do with mental schemas. I don't get how things go together, so every single symbol or every single piece of information are these in these separate compartments, and I can't carry all 1,000 of these at the same time. But when you give me that overview and I start creating mental schemas, now I have 5 things to remember instead of 100. Mm-hmm. And so that's just a good strategy in general. If y'all have ever been talking to someone, I've done this to people before. I have something on my mind, and then I will just say, yes, he said to go ahead and do that. Who said that? Do what? You might use a pronoun without the benefit of, we got to back up and give you the context for what we're talking about. So that's just like a simple example of what it might be like on the daily, right? So, and let's talk a little more about, because, and I was asked this the other day, if I think ADHD is a gift. And I said, and I talked about how we all have strengths and weaknesses. Mm-hmm. And my focus is on helping people through this struggle so they can live the best versions of themselves and the highest quality of life. But we all have strengths and weaknesses. I had one of my friends about 15 years ago or so, maybe almost 20, invented some very, very cool technology. And everyone was saying, wow, he did this despite his dyslexia. And I said, he did it largely because
mm-hmm.
of his dyslexia. So let's talk about some of the blessings, but part of it's like the life learning, but there's also, you have so many gifts.
Yes, I have been, and I tell parents this all the time and people I talk to, I have been blessed with dyslexia. I mean, yes, there are things that I struggle with. I struggle sometimes with reading comprehension and things like that. But what I am good at, I am really, really good at it. I am good at deductive reasoning. I'm good at understanding certain kind of problems that I guess, quote unquote, your normal mainstream people don't understand. Right. And sometimes I'll be talking to my friends and they're like, hey, dude, how do you understand that? And I'm like, because I'm special, dude. I'm dyslexic. Like, yeah. And they're right. Like, and they're like, I remember one time a friend of mine was like, dude, why don't you go try medication? Because the kind of thing or whatever. And I tried the medication and it slowed my mind down so much that I thought something was wrong with me. And I said, hey, babe, I can only have like one thought at a time. And she was like, what do you mean? I was like, well, I can't think of multiple things. She was like, hey, Albert, most people only have one thought at a time. And I'm like, oh,
you poor thing.
It must be so sad to be. It's okay, baby. It's okay. It's okay. So that's when I realized, instead of looking at it as a hindrance, look at all the giftings that have been given for it. The world abounds with people who see the world in different ways, and how much better are we as a people that we have all these different variations of people who can fix things that people might not have ever thought about 20, 30, 40 years ago. Right. And that is all due to all the different uniquenesses in all of us. So, yeah.
There's even a new term that hasn't made it into some dictionaries yet, but when I'm doing continuing ed units for my therapeutic background and so forth, neurodiversity. It's, diversity. We talk about multiculturalism. We live in a melting pot country, but the way our brains work is also a diversity. And, so that's important to recognize also,
Absolutely.
And to what opportunities can you give your child to do those things they excel in? And okay, we have to do this task, but there might be 10 different paths to that same goal. And one that will meld with who they are, not only from a challenge standpoint, but from what's going to intrinsically motivate them. We naturally aren't working as hard on things it can be a difficult project, but it naturally takes away a little bit of the cognitive load if we're doing things that are intrinsically motivating. They are part of our core and who we are. And these kids are so out of control of so many things in their lives. I don't want to do this math assignment, but you have to. Well, if they care that dad's a CPA and that involves math, that starts internalizing it a little bit. But if we nurture their sense of self, we're going to really start identifying what their likes and dislikes and motivations are. And we can kind of tailor things for them. That decreases the churn at least a little bit, doesn't take care of it. And it also just shows that we value them as human beings too.
If we can help the work speak for them and help the work speak in a language that they understand, right, they're absolutely going to have a better chance of really kind of understanding and not just being able to regurgitate things, right, but actually taking in the knowledge of it. So for example of that, I was talking to some friends of mine or whatever, and we were talking about kind of just fatherhood, just kind of how being a dad is like, and how, our models of dads and that kind of stuff or whatever. And one of my friends was like, dude, how did you learn how to be a dad? And I tell people honestly, I actually learned how to be a dad by watching an old black and white TV show called The Rifleman. It was with Chuck Connors, and I was able to kind of see him in that role, see that and be like, okay, when I think fatherhood for me and my future children, I want to be a dad. I want to love my boys how Lucas loved Mark. So when I saw that in that same light, that's when I was like, okay, I get it now.
Yes. I love that you shared that for so many reasons. One is, who would have thought you were getting a mental schema for what fatherhood looked like from a TV show, The Rifleman? That's one thing. Our background knowledge is really, those are the building blocks of our lives. We make decisions based on, I faced something like this before, and this is what I did. This part went well, this part not so much, so I need to redirect that part. Maybe I'm going to ask Albert, hey, I've got this going on. What do you recommend? Combine those pieces. If I'm so busy churning, some of those pieces are kind of encoded differently, so there's a struggle. But the fact that you could learn that from The Rifleman, I think it really, while families are at home with their kids right now, every moment is a teachable moment. And not just academically, I mean for life. Absolutely.
Some people would see just a TV show. I saw what a home should look like. So whether it is the Rifleman for me, or whether it's somebody sitting down playing catch in the backyard with their kid, they are teaching. So parents are always the first learners.
That's right.
Parents are the first teachers for their children. So they teach with their words and their actions. So especially during this time when everybody's kind of posted up in homes, kind of coordinated, quarantined and that kind of stuff. Understanding that this is hard times, but this is also a blessing. It could be a blessing. So yeah.
And you and I both talked about cooking yesterday. Like, cooking is fun. It's sensory. You get your hands dirty, proprioception, stir in the ingredients. But back to what you were talking about, give me a context, and then it gives me a place to put the details. What is a recipe? Here are the details, and it makes it very tangible. The big picture is the final product. Sequencing, what we do first, second, third. What do you have to do in a story? Understand first, second, third, last, and then you get to prediction and inferencing and that kind of thing. Absolutely. So that's so powerful. So tell me a little bit more about some of the services that you provide. I know you have Wright One training. He is like a keynote speaker, author, kind of extraordinaire. He and his wife have an amazing company.
Well, we're not extraordinary. We do okay.
I think you are.
So what I primarily do is I travel around and I primarily speak to teachers, directors, owners, childcare workers, and I train them on developmentally appropriate practices and kind of what it looks like to truly not just look after children, but to lead and shepherd our children. That's what I do primarily. Along with that, I also talk with parents. I consult and I help parents kind of see, hey, this is maybe what your child is looking at, or this is kind of different viewpoints that they may have. sometimes we need to see the world from their eyes. So yeah, I do a little bit of everything. Encourage reading. Only online learning. Okay. Can we answer those questions too? Do we answer those questions?
Oh yeah, for sure.
Somebody asked, how do we encourage reading during these kind of online times? I don't think they have to be separate. I think they actually can run hand in hand. Find out what that child likes to read, what they enjoy, and the way they best read. So, for example, we, of course, want our children to definitely learn with a good old-fashioned book, paper, and the whole thing. Maybe they may be more kind of dialed into reading through an app, a laptop or an iPad or Kindle or whatever. And through that seed being planted, with enough watering and growing, it may flourish a greater love for reading later on in more of a paperback form or something like that.
Yeah. And I've mentioned this site before on different times, but I love this question for the freespirit.com has amazing books for social emotional development. And they also include activities to grow character traits and skills during this time. If somebody is a baseball player and you have them read something that involves baseball, we don't want to have them read things that they're walking encyclopedias of, because then we're not stretching them. Yeah. But if it's related to a hobby or an interest of theirs, and they start getting better when they're working on the ones they're more interested in, then they're the struggle lessons, and they're going to be more inclined to read whatever they have to read, in school. Mm-hmm. But and depending on what they're into, a lot of kids like doing art. On Tuesday, we did an art show, and if they like art, have them draw. And by the way, I know this person is an artist, and I think that's your. But if your kids like art, have them draw a picture about the story or what they think is going to happen next, where you really get their imagination going, or pick a character out of the story and then go the next route and write a story based off of that, like a spin-off of a TV show.
Yeah. Hey, let's keep that going further. Let's go into a kind of a gross motor thing. Maybe we've read a story, we've talked about a story. Let's go in the backyard and act it out.
I was just going to fist bump. Yes.
Yeah, right there.
No, that I'm huge on that. Kids like that, even in 7th grade. But acting out the program. Thanks, Stephen, so much.
Kids like it. I'm a grown man. I like it.
Yes, and we, imagination and creativity are more than fun. When you do that, it's part of the broaden and build theory. Barbara Fredrickson, University of North Carolina. She's a hero of mine for my doctorate program. But when you use imagination and creativity and innovation, which are skills we need in the workplace, they're always valuable skills, but the era we're in, they've never been more valued. But you are broadening a person's view to see the big picture and the possibilities, and to recognize the shades and degrees of things, and that not everything has to be just this way. And it's really good character development and positive. It's part of positive psychology too. Absolutely.
See now you talking. You gonna make me get too comfortable on here.
I know.
You're trying to keep it together now.
We got to get out before dinner time, though. No. What were you going to say? Something else?
Well, since you're bringing it out of me, I guess I will then. I want us as educators, as leaders, as parents, to really kind of be careful during this time too. Right now, with this lockdown time, everybody's trying to homeschool and do all the kind of the curriculum and lesson planning and that kind of stuff. Those things are good and fine and well, but please do not forget the social, emotional development that these children need. Yes. I think what my fear of what's kind of happening is right now we are focused in so much on specific things and only certain ways of learning that in 20, 30 years, we'll have a society that is like really, really good at an academic piece, but they won't be able to hold conversations with each other.
Yes, that is compliance versus agency. And that so ties in, because allowing kids to be creative, there's so many ways to be creative, but compliance is always being told exactly what to do and how to do it. Agency is part of hope. Hope is made of three things, like the optimism and the setting of the goals with expectation to get them. The pathways and intrinsic motivation. Pathways means all the different ways around a setback, all the different ways to get to the same end. And it doesn't mean your way's right and mine's wrong or vice versa. So agency, what you just said there is, broadening the way they learn and celebrating that they may get to the same end in a different way. And it makes it more true to who they are. I love that. Yeah. And I know we had a couple other questions pop up. I think one was, what are we doing? And thank you. Okay, Greg, thank you so much. We are conducting online assessments right now, since the mandates have us shut down, but we're doing lots of, I'm here 3 days a week at 3:30 on Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday, and bring in super smart, cool people like Albert, so that we continue to support everyone. Our current families, I mean, we're doing weekly check-ins with them. We're doing online exercises with them to keep them going. But then for ones who we're having a lot of new people discover us, we're doing online assessments. And we have technology where we can still see you face-to-face, and setting up programs for kids to help them. Some families are scared that my child's already struggling and they're just going to be that much more behind when we get back to school. This is actually an opportunity. You and I both believe, Albert, in the blessings that come from adversity. And one of them for some of the struggling kids right now is that usually we're chasing moving targets in every arena: sensory, motor, emotional, social, academic. Right now, school is standing still. And this is a chance for us to actually help fill in some of those developmental milestones in the meantime, so they're even that much more ready to get going at school, when school returns. But so and you can anybody who needs some resources, of course, we've got a picture of Albert's contact information for his awesome services, and then my email address is hwells, just like my name is spelled on the picture, at brainbalance.com if there's anything I can do for you on that too. Were there other questions we missed? I'm not sure. What else were you going to say? And by the way, your book is fantastic. I have it in my centers. I love it. And even the name, Dyslexia is my superpower. And helping kids just celebrate that as one facet of who they are. We can do that with anything, even character traits. Is your child stubborn, or are they determined?
Absolutely.
Yes, there is a continuum of any trait that we have. Are they lazy or are they chill? I mean, we can use any of these things. That's part of mindfulness, that Harvard is so big on talking about.
Well, since you bring up my book, Dyslexia is My Superpower, I actually have a copy of it right here. With little Albert. And it just talks about me and the gifting that I have, and that I didn't know. And it took somebody to see it in me. So this book is kind of out there to help people kind of broach the conversations with their little ones, and kind of, hey, if they hear the word dyslexia, kind of that can be kind of scary at times. But hey, just because you struggle at one thing, that may mean that you are absolutely phenomenal at something else. And that's what this book does for our young people. So yeah.
Yeah, I think with me, it's one of the reasons why I had crazy good insights. I was so perceptive and insightful at a tiny, tiny age. I didn't have physical sight, but I saw things that other people didn't see, so with all of that, every person is a combination of strengths and weaknesses that we do not define us, but that does not mean we dismiss the struggles that come with that. We want them to thrive and not just get by. And so thank you so much for sharing your time with us, Albert. You're so awesome.
Thanks for having me.
I really appreciate it. And thank you to everyone who's tuned in with us. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, good stuff. I'm always glad to have an awesome episode. And I think Albert was an awesome guest, and I can't wait to do it again. So
I'm lucky to be his friend.
Well, hey, everybody, if you have any questions, just let us know. Obviously, again, huge thank you to DFW Child, who allowed us to share this on their page and reach more parents in the DFW area.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, thanks to Albert. And we'll see you here again on what?
Tomorrow at 3:30. Tomorrow this is Autism Awareness Month. So I'm going to be with Dr. Brian Aspie talking about autism. I spoke at the National Autism Conference, and I'm really excited to share with you tomorrow.
Amazing. Amazing. Well, thanks everybody for tuning in. Thanks, Heather. And we'll see you next time.
Thank you. Thanks, Heather. Bye.